The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gohmert, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much going on these days, so much to comment on. And at this time, I would like to yield such time as she may consume to my friend from Iowa, whenever she is ready.
Thank you, Representative. Accomplishments of an incredible athlete from Iowa's 2nd District. Kevin McKee of Davenport recently finished competing in the Beijing 2020 Paralympics, where he won a gold medal in sled hockey. Kevin has proudly represented the United States for over a decade, winning gold medals in the last 3 Paralympics. Kevin has always had a passion for sports, playing tennis in high school and wheelchair basketball in college. However, Kevin soon realized his passion for sled hockey in 2020 when he started playing on the sled hockey club team with the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago. Beginning in 1960, the Paralympic Games are held every 4 years and feature a wide range of athletes with different physical abilities, including impaired muscle power, impaired passive range of motion, limb deficiency, leg length difference, hypertonia, ataxia, athetosis, vision impairment, and intellectual impairment. The Paralympics are also held immediately following the respective Summer and Winter Olympic Games. Paralympians like Kevin show all of us that with hard work, dedication, and the drive to succeed, anything is possible. Congratulations, Kevin, on an outstanding performance, and I look forward to cheering you on in the future. Thank you, Mr. Representative. Madam Speaker, I yield back my time.
And I thank the lady, and I noticed the skill and adroitness of Ms. Miller making her way hurriedly around the rows, through the rows. Must have picked up something from such a great hockey player. But I want to turn my attention to some recent criticisms of an amazing man. I agree with some who have clerked at the Supreme Court that Justice Clarence Thomas may be easily the most intelligent justice on the court. That fact actually turned him from his days at Yale Law School. Actually, he started Harvard for, I think, a day or so, but he felt like Harvard was too conservative, so he dropped out, applied to Yale, and was pleased it seemed more liberal in its thinking. But Yale was able to take a brilliant person like that, and according to his book, he began to notice how liberals who were white seemed to look down on him with an arrogant view of Clarence Thomas that, gee, if it weren't for us liberals, a black man like Clarence Thomas would not have even gotten into this school, when actually he had the raw intelligence to do that regardless, and had done well everywhere he had been, including Holy Cross, when he originally went there thinking he might be a priest at some point. Those are my recollections from his autobiography, a splendid read, My Grandfather's Son. But that kind of arrogance, looking down on him like he couldn't do this on his own if it weren't for us liberals, turned him off. And that, along with other issues, drove him to become quite conservative. And the clarity with which he sees issues is a real treasure for the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, just as when he was nominated to the Supreme Court, he's come under grave attacks from these same liberals that used to look down on him when he was a liberal, thinking he couldn't possibly be as smart as they were, when actually he exceeded their level of intelligence. But that was what was called a soft form of discrimination. What he's experienced in the hearings for his confirmation since he's been on the U.S. Supreme Court clearly has not been soft discrimination. It has been overt, radical, mean-spirited, evil discrimination. Nothing soft about it. How dare that man come off the plantation and dare to have any point of view that was not provided to him by other liberals. Man thinks for himself, and he is brilliant. And these same liberals that are now coming after him seek not only to discriminate against him because he's a black conservative who's brilliant, but they also want to assert a marriage penalty against him because his wife also thinks for herself. Now, there's a great article written by Mark Paoletta, and this is dated March 11th. I won't go through the whole article, but he says, D.C. Circuit Judge Nina Pillard, for example, voted not to rehear a case rejecting President Trump's refusal to produce his tax returns in response to a congressional subpoena. That was exactly what her husband, the ACLU's litigation director, advocated in an article reviewing the lower court decision. Now, Justice Thomas is being told he needs to recuse himself because he has a wife who thinks for herself. We can't have that, these liberals say. Yet the hypocrisy rises higher and higher with every comment they make about Justice Thomas and or his wife. Ninth Circuit Judge Stephen Reinhart, a liberal icon, participated in a case even after his wife, the chief of an ACLU chapter, commented on the lower court opinion. Her ACLU chapter even submitted a brief to the district court. Reinhart defended his decision not to recuse, writing his wife's, quote, "views are hers, not mine. I do not in any way condition my opinions on the position she takes regarding any issues," unquote, even though he took the same position that his wife took. The article said ethics experts defended Reinhart's decision, noting that, quote, Judge Reinhart is not presumed to be the reservoir and carrier of his wife's beliefs. A contrary outcome would deem a judge's spouse unable to hold most any position of advocacy, creating what amounts to a marriage penalty. Exactly. And liberals will not apply that standard to liberals, and yet they come after Justice Thomas with their fangs bared, viciously attacking him and his wife. What happened to the old ideas of liberals being these caring, compassionate people who would never judge one spouse by the acts or thoughts of the other? Well, those have gone by the wayside, and we see exactly what's at play here. Article says the Supreme Court has long rejected this marriage penalty. Further down, it says, while any lower court can substitute a recused judge with another judge, there is no one to replace a Supreme Court justice who recuses. And that's what we lost my constitutional law professor in the last year, David Gwynn. He was a tough professor, but a great teacher, and he continued to be an incredible resource up to the end of his life. And he used to say, there's only one court that owes its existence wholly to the U.S. Constitution. Of course, that's the U.S. Supreme Court. All other courts, as he would say, rely completely on the auspices of the Congress for their existence, for their continued existence, and for their jurisdiction. So it is interesting to look at this, and it's a great point that is being made by some scholars. Since the Supreme Court is set up as a separate branch, that's actually the one that Congress does not have authority to set up rules for recusal for the Supreme Court. This article from Mr. Paoletta says, consistent with the court's policy, even though Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's husband, Marty Ginsburg, practiced law at a firm that represented parties before the Supreme Court, Justice Ginsburg never recused herself. Law professor Jane Ginsburg, the justice's daughter, wrote an article about a case pending before the Supreme Court. The petitioner even cited Jane's article in his brief, and Justice Ginsburg voted for the result advocated by her daughter. Marty Ginsburg solved a complex tax problem for his client, Ross Perot's company, EDS, and Perot endowed a chair named after Marty Ginsburg at Georgetown University Law Center, where Perot and EDS appeared several times, or when Perot and EDS appeared several times before the Supreme Court. Justice Ginsburg did not recuse, nor was she required to, and I would add, nor did any of these people attacking the black conservative Justice Thomas bother to advocate their new position back then. If reporters mean to tighten recusal standards, they should prepare to levy a marriage penalty on all judges' spouses, not just the Thomases. But the press now singles out Justice Thomas, calling on him to recuse because of his wife's activities. Ginni Thomas is a longtime conservative activist who works with groups that take public positions on issues and sometimes even file amicus briefs at the Supreme Court. But unlike the spouses and children of other judges, Ginni Thomas does not practice law, much less write briefs. She merely builds conservative coalitions to pursue shared political aims. None of her activities require Justice Thomas to recuse. Even so, the press criticized Ginni Thomas for honoring conservative leaders at awards luncheons because those individuals subsequently filed amicus briefs at the Supreme Court. Historically, this has not required recusal. Ginsburg once donated an autographed copy of her VMI opinion to the pro-abortion Now Political Action Committee, which auctioned off the opinion at a fundraiser in 1997. Moreover, in 2004, she spoke at a lecture named after herself for the Now Legal Defense Fund. That's the National Association of Women. on whose board she served in the 1970s. 2 weeks before that lecture, Justice Ginsburg voted in favor of a position advocated by now the National Association of Women, or Organization of Women Legal Defense Fund, in an amicus brief. None of those activities required Ginsburg to recuse, but the press has attacked Justice Thomas for stoking concerns of a hyper-partisan court by attending conservative events. Thomas's critics conveniently ignore the numerous instances of liberal justices attending similar events, such as Justice Sotomayor giving speeches to the Liberal American Constitution Society. These recent stories have also ignored Justice Ginsburg's partisan attack on Donald Trump during the 2016 presidential campaign. The justice called him a faker and criticized him for not disclosing his tax returns. She even voiced concerns about Trump being president. The day after he was elected, Ginsburg again objected by wearing a collar that traditionally signaled she would be dissenting in a case, though there were no cases handed down that day. Yet she sat on a case challenging a congressional subpoena for President Trump's tax returns, and she decided plenty of other cases involving President Trump and his administration. No one talked about impeaching Justice Ginsburg for her conduct. The media are weaponizing baseless ethics charges to smear a conservative black justice. Justice Thomas infuriates them because he expresses views they consider unacceptable for a black man to hold, and because an increasing number of justices are aligned with those views and may be ready to issue rulings that undercut long-standing liberal precedents, but going after his wife is despicable, and it won't work. So it's also interesting that the majority in H.R. 1 attempts to go after, without naming Justice Thomas, it requires the Judicial Conference of the United States, which is chaired by the Chief Justice, to establish a mandatory code of conduct for the justices of the U.S. Supreme Court. This is potentially unconstitutional, and this is according to testimony before Congress by Hans von Spassky, and he makes a good point. Article 3 states that the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. The Constitution, not Congress, created the Supreme Court. It is an independent, co-equal branch. In the same way that the justices cannot dictate what ethics rules apply to members of Congress or the president, it's highly questionable whether Congress can dictate the ethics rules that apply to the Supreme Court. Since the Judicial Conference was established by Congress, quote, for the benefit of the courts it created, and is, quote, an instrument for the management of the lower federal courts, its committees have no mandate to prescribe rules or standards for any other body, unquote. According to the Chief Justice, justices use the current code of conduct for the lower courts as guidance, as well as, quote, a wide variety of other authorities to resolve specific ethics issues, unquote. Supreme Court has, quote, never addressed whether Congress may impose those requirements on the Supreme Court, unquote. But serious constitutional problem under Article 3 with Congress trying to impose such mandates on the justices, although they comply with the current provisions voluntarily. So very good points, but just interesting how selective things have gotten. Now, most judges and most judicial standards will indicate that if a justice has spoken out and taken a position on a case that has come or is before the court, it indicates an opinion before the case has concluded, that that justice should be recused. But we know two of the Supreme Court justices actually appeared, performed weddings, same-sex weddings, before they came out with their opinion. So that certainly seemed to raise questions that people attacking Justice Thomas never actually raised back during those days. And it was interesting to be in here and hear the colloquy between the majority leader and the majority whip, and hear the majority leader go back to the allegations raised by President Biden about all these leases